Hello and welcome in to Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, I want to sing D'Angelo Russell's praises, a much maligned member of the Timberwolves, quote unquote, big three, which is maybe not so much, it shouldn't be in quotations anymore. D'Angelo Russell's been fantastic this season. I want to talk quite a bit about his impressive play on both ends of the floor, believe it or not. Then I want to get into the league wide power rankings, a couple of interesting team statistics, and then finally a preview of Wolves Wizards on Wednesday night. It's all upcoming on the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. I'm also the editor of Dunking with Wolves, the Timberwolves site on the Fansided Network. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to you by Truebill. Truebill is the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you don't want or need, and can even negotiate better deals on those you want to keep. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Happy Timberwolves game day. The Timberwolves take on the Washington Wizards in our nation's capital on Wednesday night. We'll close the show today by previewing that matchup, a somewhat surprising Wizards team that's been very good this year, despite some struggles from Bradley Beal, one of the worst seasons of his career to this point. We'll talk about that later. I want to start the show by talking about D'Angelo Russell. I want to spend some time really kind of praising a player that I have been really hard on over the past, really since he's been in a Timberwolves uniform. Credit where credit is due. We have to talk about D'Lo, how well he's playing. I also want to talk about power rankings. The Timberwolves are rising in the power rankings from around the league. We've got 4 or 5 different websites I pulled where the Wolves rank and some interesting statistics to go along with those rankings. And I want to talk about that today on the show as well. So we're going to get to all that. Thank you, first of all, for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. Remember, Locked On Wolves is free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube, as well as all of the audio platforms that you like to listen to, whether that's Apple, Google, Spotify, or hopefully the all-new Odyssey app. We're available in all those places. You can also follow on Twitter at LockedOnTWolves, and my account is at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. Okay, so if you're a regular listener to the show, you know that I have, or if you've listened, I guess, for the last 18 months or so, which hopefully is the case. And if not, welcome, and please continue to listen. Hopefully, um, hopefully me admitting, not where I was wrong, because I think a lot of the criticism of D'Angelo Russell, I mean, he's not a perfect player, right? Yes, he was an all-star in Brooklyn 3-4 years ago. Um, he was an injury replacement all-star. He was kind of at best a fringe all-star anyway. He's never been a good defender at the NBA level. He's never been quite the passer at the NBA level that he was at Ohio State. He's always been a very good passer. The efficiency hasn't always been there. He's a high volume 3-point shooter, but not a marksman. So there's kind of this, what is D'Angelo Russell? Is he really a player that genuinely makes your team better? And the idea when Gerson Rosas traded for him now almost 2 years ago was that not only was he best friends with Karl-Anthony Towns, but a shoot first point guard who can also be a really impressive passer could be the perfect pick and roll partner for Karl-Anthony Towns, who had never played with a dynamic point guard. Jeff Teague, 30-year-old Jeff Teague on the Timberwolves, not necessarily dynamic, not the perfect match with Towns, didn't really shoot the ball with any confidence outside the arc. Ricky Rubio, obviously, both last year and then in his first year with Towns, was not a scoring threat really at all. Great passer, very good defender, not a scoring threat. All the point guards in between, the Chris Dunns, the Tyus Jones is probably the closest thing, but was never really a regular starter with the Timberwolves, and very good pick and roll point guard, a solid defender, but not a very dynamic scorer for as good as Tyus is. D'Angelo Russell, the idea was, he could score off the bounce, he could shoot threes, he can pass. Big body point guard, can help orchestrate the offense. This is going to be a great pairing. Well, not only did we not see them play together much because of first it was a brief Towns injury, then it was a more serious D'Lo injury, or I guess it was flipped, it was the other way around. And then last season we had Towns had COVID, Towns had the wrist injury, then Russell ended up having knee surgery, and they finally played together at the end of last season. I believe they went 9-7. The Timberwolves were 9-7 in the 16 games that they played together, something like that. So we finally started to see this come to fruition. Now, the start of this season was very clunky. New head coach, generally speaking, a new offense. They didn't work on any offense in training camp. It was all defensive work. And the Timberwolves offense was very, very, I think clunky is the best word for it. It was a your turn, my turn offense. It was, okay, ant isolation. We're going to run a bunch of post ups for Karl-Anthony Towns, and he's going to get double teamed and turn the ball over trying to pass out of it. And I'm of course, being a little bit harsh on, obviously, the Wolves were okay early in the season, but the offense has not been great. So anyway, your turn, my turn. So it was Ant, then it was Cat, then it was late in the game. It was D'Angelo Russell, kind of, other than like a couple of stretches here and there in the first couple of weeks. D'Lo was not very good offensively. Now what we're seeing 21 games into the season, and especially over the past, certainly 2 weeks, but in D'Lo's case, the last week, is D'Angelo Russell looking really comfortable and confident within the confines of, and Chris Finch doesn't put really, I wouldn't even say the Timberwolves offense has confines. I think the way Finch has described it before to the media is putting guardrails and saying, okay, here's the actions we want to run. You guys do your thing within these guardrails. D'Lo is now understanding his role in addition to Ant and Cat. I think he understands he is not the guy. D'Angelo Russell's a smart player. He's a smart person. I think that's abundantly clear, and he gets it now. And I wonder if what the element was, and I don't want to go too much off on a tangent here, but the relationship between D'Lo and Ryan Saunders, there was no love lost there. I talked about this on the show not that long ago. Um, Pretty well known that they weren't the biggest fans of one another. They didn't get along great. They had different visions for how the Timberwolves offense should run. And D'Lo very much likes Chris Finch. That much is obvious. And I don't know how much it is. I'm not at all claiming that D'Angelo Russell intentionally sabotaged Ryan Saunders. I think there's a lot of other things going on there that caused the Timberwolves to not be successful the last year and a half. But I think D'Lo's, if nothing else, more motivated to play well for Chris Finch and also understanding his role. The Timberwolves offense is going to flow through Karl-Anthony Towns. And while Karl has not been as efficient as we're used to seeing, and he's been in even more foul trouble than we're used to seeing and turning the ball over more than he has really ever in his career, I believe. He had 9 turnovers on Monday against the Pacers. Towns did, and he fouled out again. That's where the offense starts. And then off of that, it's Anthony Edwards. Okay, now Ant can operate pick and roll. Now we'll get Ant in an isolation situation within the flow of the offense where he can get to the basket. And then D'Lo kind of fills in those gaps, especially now without Patrick Beverley. And by the way, this is coinciding with Beverley's injury, which makes it all that much more important. With no Pat Bev, there's no true backup point guard. It was Jordan McLaughlin, but now the last 2 games, it's been Leandro Balmaro. It's been really a rookie forward. I know the idea is he could basically be your secondary playmaker, moving forward down the line. But as a 20-year-old, he's now the backup point guard. D'Lo's been playing more minutes, and he's also been spending more time playing with the second unit when he's got more room to operate. So D'Lo will oftentimes, the last couple games, he's been the first sub out. He'll come back in before the end of the first quarter even and be playing D'Lo with basically bench guys. Now that includes Malik Beasley, who's a starting caliber talent, but you're looking at D'Lo plus bench guys, and he gets a little bit more room to operate. He can look for his shot. He can get, his feet wet in the offense early in the game. But for the most part, we're seeing him be a distributor for the first 2.5, 3 quarters of the game before kind of morphing into the ice in my veins D'Lo late in the game. And he has legitimately been that. And it's understanding his role, again, as a very intelligent player, picking his spots. And then when D'Lo gets hot, we can talk about whether or not the hot hand's a real thing statistically, but when D'Angelo Russell's hot, D'Angelo Russell's hot. I mean, he just is. He can get his shot off from anywhere, despite not being ultra athletic, because of his size and just his hierarchy shot, the way his release. He's able to get his, mid-range fallaways. He's able to get his 27 footers off. He's able to get D'Angelo Russell doesn't get into the paint very often, but when he drives to the basket, he doesn't get his shot blocked very often, especially for he doesn't elevate very much off the floor, but he's crafty enough and his scoop shots are so, his left-handed scoop layups that he likes to shoot. He's very, very good, obviously going to his left. He's been so good the last few games. I want to mention one stat before we move on that I thought was really interesting, and this is a little bit of a segue. It's part of the power rankings over at NBA.com, and I've said this before, but John Schumann at NBA.com has the best power rankings of anybody. I know it is NBA.com, so it feels kind of, I don't know, corporate maybe that I'm talking about a ranking from the NBA site. It's better than the other power rankings, really. John goes into that, he lists the offensive and defensive efficiency numbers, the pace, net rating, and always has like a true deep dive on each of these. It's not just like, I think these teams should rank here because of their records. There's an actual deep dive to it. And John Schumann, he talks about Patrick Beverley getting hurt, et cetera. And this was, I believe, this is before the Pacers win Monday. So this is, I think, published Sunday. Um, Check this out. He says, talks about D'Angelo Russell's possibly his best game with Minnesota against the Sixers on Saturday. He says he had 35 points, was 5 for 8 in the clutch, including 2 huge threes in the first overtime, and came up with the steal that led to Taurean Prince's game-winning bucket. Russell is one of 19 players who have attempted at least 200 clutch shots over the last 4 seasons. Okay. So since 2018-19, not including playoffs, 19 players have shot at least 200 shots identified as or classified as clutch shots, which I believe is within 2 possessions in the final 2 minutes of regulation or overtime. D'Angelo Russell has the best clutch effective field goal percentage of all 19 of those players that have shot 200 or more clutch shots over the last 4 seasons. His effective field goal percentage is 54.3%. Best among those 19 players. He's been the best clutch shooter over the past 4 seasons in the NBA of any of the guys who have any real volume. That's legit ice in my veins, D'Angelo Russell. I mean, that's real. He is a legitimate clutch shooter. And I think I'm not going to sit here and argue that like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan are not clutch, but those types of players, especially, especially towards the end of Kobe's career, he had this reputation of making big shots. Sure, but if you take all the big shots, you're going to make enough that you're going to make a highlight reel where people are like, he's a great clutch shooter. It wasn't always the case for some of these guys. And I singled out Kobe maybe unfairly, but he's one player that I think that fits a little bit. D'Angelo Russell's, we're talking regular season. We're not talking playoffs. We're talking, very early in his career still. We can argue about the stakes, but they're still clutch shots, and he's making them at a higher rate, at a higher success rate than anybody else in the league. Who knows if that's sustainable or not? I just think it's notable that it's not simply confirmation bias that D'Angelo Russell's clutch. He is clutch right now. He just is. And beyond the clutch play, he's been really good. And I didn't even talk about his defense, and I meant to do that. But D'Lo has been awesome defensively. And I never thought I would say that. And I think that maybe goes along with the Chris Finch thing, being head coach and convinced, and also Patrick Beverley, credit to Pat Bev for no doubt getting Russell to play harder. I said this before. D'Lo is a very intelligent player. He's got size, he's got length, he's got the ability to anticipate on both ends of the floor, and just playing passing lanes, just fighting through screens, just making that extra little bit of effort, thinking just another half step ahead, and allowing yourself to play the passing lanes, allowing yourself to just get a hand up, to make the right rotation, to contest the shot on the perimeter, to close out under control. These are all things that D'Angelo Russell didn't really do previously in his career, and he's doing them now. And it's taken him from awful, like one of the worst defenders in the league, quite literally, to a very average defender, if not a little bit above average, at least in the last few games. Again, tiny sample size. If we see this over the course of much of the season, this is newsworthy. I mean, this version, the D'Angelo Russell from the last 3-4 games, is an all-star. It is. It's an all-star player. And I know that that's hard to believe. I was as hard on D'Lo as anybody over the past 2 years, but he's been fantastic so far this year. And I'm not, I think that deserves attention. So we'll definitely continue to talk about that and follow the narrative of D'Lo, because I don't think it has turned into a narrative yet, and it should. That D'Lo is kind of been the unsung hero of the Timberwolves so far this year. Everybody's excited about, obviously, Jared Vanderbilt, and Anthony Edwards been fantastic, and Towns has had his monster games. More recently, Josh Okogie didn't play for a few games and was great on Saturday or on Monday. But we got to talk about D'Lo. D'Lo's been really, really good. Okay. Next, I want to look at the power rankings, a few different power rankings from around the internet, and what everybody's saying, a couple things about the Timberwolves' recent stretch. And then we'll get into a preview of Wednesday night's Wolves-Wizards matchup in DC. First, though, let's talk about our friends at Indeed. Well, there's always going to be a debate between LeBron and Jordan when it comes to helping you hire all-star talent faster. The GOAT is Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is a hiring partner that gets you what you really want, a short list of quality candidates as fast as possible, because you can do it all. Attract, interview, and hire all at Indeed. Indeed is an unbelievably powerful hiring partner. You can do all those things: attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't struggle on your own to find quality candidates. Indeed can help you hire the right people right now. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process. You can find talent with the skills you need through tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Indeed makes it easier for star applicants to shine. With over 135 assessment tests from cooking to coding, pick what skills are important to you from over those 135 assessments and get a clear view of your top talent's abilities faster. Assessments make the interview process smoother for everyone. Talent doesn't need to prove themselves again, and you can dive deeper into talking about what's important to you. With Indeed assessments, you can reduce hiring time by 12%, according to Indeed data worldwide. Get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked. That's a $75 credit at Indeed.com/locked. Indeed.com/locked. Offer valid through December 31st. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Let's also talk about our friends, longtime friends over at Built Bar. This last weekend was Thanksgiving. Hopefully, you had a lot of delicious food and treats and plenty of them, but perhaps you wanted a yummy dessert that isn't so full of calories and sugar and are still craving some. I'm sure hopefully by now the pie's gone. So it's the perfect time for Built Bar. Built Bar is the new holiday dessert. It's still the holiday season, of course, for the next few weeks. You can feast on something delicious and feel good about it. Pie, which again, hopefully you're taking a break from the pie between, I'm going to try to at least myself, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. One slice of pie is upwards of 300 calories, and that's on the low end. Most Built Bars are just 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar with plenty of protein. Low calorie, low carb, low fat, high protein, covered in 100% real chocolate. Built Bar is a great option for when you're hungry. If Thanksgiving and Christmas, there's too much of a gap in between those two for you, just have a Built Bar. They're delicious. New surprises all month. Limited time flavors arriving at Built.com regularly. There were some brand new flavors for Cyber Monday. I believe they extended some of those offers, so check it out at Built.com. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, let's talk power rankings. Before we do that, actually, Alan Horton, the Timberwolves, the voice of the Timberwolves, the radio voice of the Timberwolves, put something out. This was on, what day was this? I think this was on Monday. Yeah, it was Monday. So this is actually before the Pacers game. He had a really interesting tweet of the Wolves, the Wolves league rank in 5-game intervals throughout the season. So, I mentioned earlier about the Wolves' offensive and defensive efficiency. Right now, I think they're like 11th in defensive rating, according to Basketball Reference, and like 16th or 17th in offensive rating. So really good, compared to where they've been in recent years. But Alan Horton broke this down. And again, this was a tweet from Monday, and he just screenshotted game notes or something. In 5-game intervals, how the Timberwolves have performed. So the first 5 games, remember, they were 3-2. They started 2-0, then they had a couple of bad losses, and then they got, I forget who they beat in game 5. They were 4th in defensive rating. Remember, we were talking about how crazy good the defense was. The offense was 23rd. They went 3-2. Then the 5-game losing streak. That included the blowout losses to the Clippers. I don't know, it was just a miserable 5-game stretch. They were 29th in defensive rating. They went from 4th to 29th. We all said, here we go again. A little bit, myself included. I don't know that I was quite sky is falling guy at that point, but there were a couple bad ones. All the games to the Clippers, I guess the defense was awful. The offensive rating was just 26. So over that 5-game losing streak, they had the 29th ranked net rating in the league. So they went from 10th net rating in the first 5, 29th in the next 5. Games 11 to 15 is when they went 3-2. They started this win streak that they're currently still on, or this winning stretch. They were 6th in defensive ratings. They bounced all the way back up, middle of the pack in offense, overall 9th in net rating. The next 5 games, they continue this stretch. This includes the Miami game last week, the win last Monday, the Miami game, the loss in Charlotte, and then the win on Saturday, double overtime in Philadelphia. 7th in offensive rating and 8th in defensive ratings. The offense actually, for the first time this year, kind of edged ahead of the defense, net rating 5th overall in that 5-game stretch. And now Monday, of course, was a little bit of an uglier win, the 198 win over the Pacers, but that's going to help certainly defensive rating wise, holding a team under 100 points. And I think that's a really fascinating, the way that Allen put it in his tweet was the most balanced stretch of the season. It's exactly what it was. If you have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense, you're going to win most of your games. Perhaps that goes without saying, but I just think it's a really interesting, kind of fun, bite-sized way to look at the season so far. So with that said, league-wide power rankings wise, The Timberwolves are understandably rising through power rankings. They were ranked last week. Well, I guess 2 weeks ago was kind of the last time we talked about this on the show. They were kind of in the 25th range, right? Because they had just lost, had the 5-game losing streak, etc. Now, uh, I mean, they're anywhere from 11th to 19th, depending on which power rankings you look at. So the consensus, there isn't really a consensus anymore. It just depends on how much people are buying into this newfound, well, I guess newfound balance, like I just talked about. ESPN has the Timberwolves down at 19th. It's still 4 spots ahead of where they were the week before. ESPN had them at 23rd, but now they're at 19th on ESPN. The Athletic, Zach Harper, has the Timberwolves at 18. He has them back in his tiers of teams that are fighting for the have a shot at the play, and the play-in gives them life, is the way that he puts it. Over at the Athletic, has them at 18. Says he can't get a handle on the Timberwolves so far. I talked about John Schumann at NBA.com. He has the Timberwolves at 17, so 19, 18, 17. And that seems about right to me. I'd probably have the Wolves in the 15 to 17 range myself. I mentioned the D'Lo, the clutch comment that he made about D'Angelo Russell. Bleacher Report, this is Andy Bailey, who does a good job at Bleacher Report. He has generally liked the Wolves this year. He has them up at 16. So we have Bleacher Report at 16, NBA.com at 17, The Athletic, Zach Harper at 18, and ESPN at 19. ESPN, of course, is the one that have a panel of experts and analysts that vote, and then the consensus is what gets published. So Bleacher Report has them at 16. And then there's somebody named Brian Kilbrowski over at For the Win on USA Today. He has the Wolves up at 11. He has them ahead of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Boston Celtics, and Philadelphia 76ers, who all have equal or better records than the Wolves, but they all play in the Eastern Conference. And we all know that if the Timberwolves were in the Eastern Conference, they would have a better record than 11 and 10. I think that's pretty clear. One interesting note that he has over at USA Today, and again, this is Brian Kilbrowski. He notes that the Timberwolves' preferred starting lineup, so this is before Patrick Beverley's injury, obviously, the preferred starting lineup of D'Angelo Russell, Patrick Beverley, Anthony Edwards, Jared Vanderbilt, and Karl-Anthony Towns has a league best net rating, or league best, net rating of plus 48.3 points per 100 possessions during 92 minutes together on the floor. The best of any 5-man unit in the league that would qualify 100 possessions, or per 100 possessions, of plus 48.3, which is just insane. But it makes sense. I talked about this before the season. Add Jared Vanderbilt next to Karl-Anthony Towns. Add a defender between D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards, and you get D'Lo and Edwards playing something resembling league average defense. That's a really good lineup. And then it's just getting Malik Beasley to play a little bit better, and it's figuring out the backup point guard role. Is it McLaughlin? Is it Balmaro? Figuring out Jaden McDaniels' mix of minutes. Naz Reid's been very good. This is I even when this team was not playing well, I maintained that the depth was good. The depth is very good. They won on Monday with no McDaniels. They won on Monday with no Vanderbilt, no Patrick Beverley. And we'll talk in a minute. Anthony Edwards is now on the injury report for Wednesday as well. The depth of this team is going to be tested this year. And to this point, it's been very impressive what they've been able to do from a depth perspective. Okay, I want to close the show by talking about the Wolves-Wizards game. I want to do a quick preview of that. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at betonline.ag. BetOnline has you covered all season. More props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues their march to the playoffs. Basketball is now in full swing. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today. Receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus from football to basketball, NHL to boxing and UFC, right on down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay. Let's talk Wolves Wizards. So the Washington Wizards basically remade their entire roster, sans Bradley Beal, essentially, this offseason. Obviously no Russell Westbrook. They made a couple of major trades, and they hired Wes Unseld to be their head coach. By the way, they also hired away Joseph Blair, who is supposed to be a front row coach for the Timberwolves this season and was going to coach the Summer League team. The day that Summer League started, he left, flew to DC to join Wes Unseld's staff with the Wizards. So keep that in mind, that Blair obviously knows this team, was with them throughout the offseason program for the most part this year, and would certainly have some insight on the Timberwolves. Has been with the team or I guess he was only with them for a year, I believe, but still knows the personnel very well. But this Wizards team, has been surprisingly good. They're 13-8. There's been a little bit of luck involved. They've won some close games. I mean, the Pythagorean record, which again takes the point differential and says, hey, this is an average, a team with the point differential of this should have this record. It says they should be 11-10. They're actually 13-8. So they've outperformed that by 2 wins already, which is impressive. They're just 18th in offensive rating, according to Basketball Reference. They have not been very consistent on that end of the floor. They're 14th in defensive rating. Injury wise, well, actually, I'll get to that in a second. They're not a good 3-point shooting team. They're 26th in attempts per game, and they're 27th in 3-point shooting percentage. They get to the line a fair amount, and they're a good free throw shooting team. And they're also pretty middle of the pack, both ends of the floor in terms of rebounding. So this is a team that's certainly beatable. I haven't looked at the line in Washington. Neither team playing the night before. I don't believe Washington played on Tuesday. I'm going to confirm that. No, they did not. So, I mean, my guess is the Wizards will be favored by a point, maybe point and a half, too. But this is a more than winnable game for Minnesota. In terms of who's been doing all the damage for the Wizards, you'd assume it's Bradley Beal, and he is scoring 23 points a game, but he's shooting a career low 27.2% on threes, which is just insane. We're talking about a guy that was plus 40, over 40% just a few years ago. Always been more of a volume guy, but just under 44% from the floor, 27% from three, just uncharacteristic for Bradley Beal. You could argue this has been his worst season of his career to this point. So really disappointing. Montrezl Harrell's been amazing for them off the bench. Another new addition. Spencer Dinwiddie, been very good as a starter. Kyle Kuzma, same thing. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, tons of former Lakers. Harrell, Kuzma, Caldwell-Pope. All those guys have played well for them. And it's a team that the Timberwolves shouldn't have that much trouble with, but the Wizards will try and slow the game down. They'll try and play more half court. Obviously, we'll do what they can to frustrate Towns. Harrell can definitely frustrate Towns. It's not like the Wizards are going to do a ton of damage in the paint. They're not going to, they're not going to try and basically get Towns in trouble by pounding the ball in the paint. That's not necessarily their game. But they're going to shoot some mid-range jumpers. They're going to, Bradley Beal obviously likes doing that. Spencer Dinwiddie's comfortable playing in the in-between game. Kyle Kuzma is probably their most consistent long-range threat that's part of the rotation. But again, they don't shoot a ton of threes as a team. If Towns can stay out of foul trouble, and especially if Vanderbilt can play, the Timberwolves should be able to beat up the Wizards on the glass. That should be the goal, to try and win that way. But not exclusively that way. But if they can win the battle on the glass, it will definitely help them win this thing a lot easier. Anthony Edwards was added to the injury report on Tuesday as questionable due to flu-like symptoms. Both Jaden McDaniels and Jared Vanderbilt, who of course each missed Monday's game, they're both still on the report as questionable. So Edwards, McDaniels, and Vanderbilt are all questionable due to flu-like symptoms. Ant has yet to miss an NBA game. He played in all 72 games last year, all 21 games so far this year. So he's 93 for 93 in terms of NBA games possible to played so far. So obviously, hopefully Ant can play. If he doesn't, it's going to be Jalen Noel time. We'll probably see some more Landry Balmaro, but a lot of Jalen Noel, I would expect. It wouldn't even surprise me if he started instead of Malik Beasley. It seems like Chris Finch is pretty hell-bent on keeping Beasley on the bench and trying to get him accustomed to that role, which he still hasn't fully gotten all the way into. It just hasn't clicked yet for Bees. He's only had like 3 or 4 actually good games this year. So it wouldn't shock me if Jalen Noel got the start if Edwards didn't play. It's still a big if. We're talking more than 24 hours prior Edwards is added due to flu-like symptoms. And hopefully maybe if he can't play, hopefully McDaniels or Vanderbilt can be available for the Timberwolves in this one as well. So Wolves Wizards Wednesday night. I would expect this to be I think, if Ant plays, I would expect the Timberwolves to win this game. I get the Wizards are 13-8, but you look at some of their wins. I mean, they just beat the Thunder by 2. Their last time out, they were blown out on the road by the Spurs. They were blown out by the Pelicans on the road just last week. They did beat the Mavs on the road. So this is their first game home after a 4-game road trip. But I mean, they squeaked out a win against the Thunder. They have a 2-possession win over the Pelicans. They beat the Magic, a 1-possession win over the Cavs. So it's not like they're blowing out teams, and it's not like they're beating that many good teams. There's a couple nice wins in there: a Heat victory, a Mavericks victory, a Bucks victory. But this team's had some good fortune to this point, and I think this is a very winnable game for Minnesota. We'll, of course, have a post-game podcast following Wolves Wizards late Wednesday, so be sure that you're following and subscribed to get that. And thank you also for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. And a reminder that we're available on all platforms, including YouTube. And if you don't want to look at my face while I talk about the Timberwolves, you can listen on any audio platform that includes Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course, the all-new Odyssey app. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. Thanks once again for listening. A reminder that Locked On Wolves is part of course, the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. We'll be back after Wolves Wizards on Wednesday. Enjoy the game. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.